Welcome, Jonathan. Excuse me. Great to see you.
Thanks, Emily.
I know it's a big week for you. You got your new book launching, so congrats on that.
Thank you.
Um, for those who are listening, Jonathan is a master coach and business strategist who specializes in helping entrepreneurs and family business owners scale or exit their business. He left New York for California at the age of 20 after his family's large privately held men's apparel manufacturing company, which was started by his great grandfather, sold to a conglomerate in its third generation of family ownership. So quite a long family lineage there. And within 10 years, Jonathan had established himself as the go to expert for entrepreneurs looking to find their version of freedom, which is interesting because that's similar to our core purpose. So I'd love to chat about that too. Today, Jonathan has 30 years of experience coaching, consulting, training, financing, and guiding entrepreneurial and family businesses. So, welcome, Jonathan.
Thanks, Emily, for having me on your podcast.
Yeah. So let's talk about your new book. It's so
Yeah,
exciting. I'm so happy for you. So, what is the Disruptive Successor about?
yeah. So it's about a year's worth of work, and
I bet.
it's quite an accomplishment, actually. For those of you who've written a book, congratulations. For those of you thinking about writing a book, give me a call, and I'll tell you what you're looking forward to. So my book is a playbook for how to scale up and transition the ownership from one generation to the next of a family business.
So cool.
It really could be written and read by any entrepreneur who wants to scale up their business. But I do fill it with stories about family businesses where there's a transition going on. And not all transitions are successful. So most of the playbook is focused on how to scale the business and what you as the next generation leader, a Gen 2 leader, has to do. It's a different mindset than the Gen 3 or Gen 4 leader, but it oftentimes could be the same. So that's really what it's about is how to grow your family business.
Awesome. And is it for sale on Amazon? Like, how do people get a copy of it?
Yeah. So available for sale on Amazon, Disruptive Successor. I also have a website if someone wants to download a chapter, preview it, look at some of the tools, and that's disruptivesuccessor.com. So, but you can look at a lot of the book on Amazon and you'll see reviews from other people on it there as well.
I love the title. I think it's like provocative. Um,
Yeah, well, because I'm trying to speak to a millennial entrepreneur who has a baby boomer father or parent who owns the business, and that the millennial wants something more challenging, wants something more different, and they're
mhm.
not looking to just maintain the status quo.
Yeah.
Because if you're, it's an old phrase in coaching and other things. If you're not growing, you're dying, and just maybe at a slower rate if you're standing still.
Yeah.
So this is very much of a growth roadmap
So
type book.
cool. I know so many people that are going through that transition. So I think it's, you're going to have quite an audience for the topic. Um, why did you write? Why did you choose to write the book?
I think I had a lot to share and wanted to put it out there. A lot of information that I've accumulated. I've been, distributing it to clients one by one and in small teams. So in one sense, it was a way to get the word out in a bigger way and see if I might be able to build a tribe. It's already launched me into the family business coaching consulting community, and which I really like. I'm meeting lots of new people, but it's today coaching has become so common. There are so many coaches out there, especially with the work at home thing in place. People are figuring out, I can be a health coach, I can be a food coach, I can be a fitness coach, I can be a speaker, an executive.
Yeah.
So I wanted to niche down because I've been a scaling up coach, I've been a growth coach, I've been an EOS implementer. It was time for Jonathan to put out Jonathan's book about, I'm a disruptive successor coach.
I love
So that maybe will be my new tag.
it. So, I mean, obviously, this stems from your own story. So, Can you tell me a little bit about your family's business? I know it was located here in Philly, which is where I'm at.
Yep. So, I actually had to do some research on this and found a very long Tumblr blog, um, because I didn't hang on to the family, whatever you call those diaries, journals that were written, and I wasn't really that firsthand aware and involved because the
Mm-hmm.
factory was in Philadelphia. I had no contact with that. When I was 18 or 20, I was passing through on the train that goes right through North Philly. I woke up and looked up and saw the water tower on top of the building with the emblem, the logo of my family's business, and I thought, okay, this is pretty interesting.
Wow.
But the corporate executive headquarters were in Manhattan, and so all I saw when I went to visit my grandfather was the fancy lunch places that he went to and the fancy executive offices and some suit samples. So the business was very successful, and when it was into the third generation, the family members were all in-laws at that point, like cousins and in-laws, and I don't think any. And then my dad passed at a very young age, 35.
Wow.
So it just didn't seem like it was going to make it at all into the fourth generation. Would have had gone through major transformation. They would have had to shed themselves of the Philadelphia factory. They would have had done what everyone else did, was start going overseas and manufacturing men's apparel. And my grandfather, his last 10 years, suffered from a series of strokes, so it wasn't easy to communicate with him. And so, really, what that business provided me, because it provided everyone in the family, it provided me with some finances at a young age. So that gave me some freedom, a
Mm-hmm.
freedom to go west to California and to discover and follow my own bliss, if you will, or path, and find my freedom, find what was going to float my boat. And I started drifting back into entrepreneurial businesses after running some nonprofits and some organizations. I started a few small businesses. One was a clothing company. It was an art and clothing company, which was my grandfather was an artist on top of being a
Oh,
clothing
wow.
salesman. I thought it was going to be a phenomenal success, but I chose poorly in my partnership. He did not treat me like family, and he was willing to spend every nickel I would put into that business.
Wow.
And so I closed it down, went back to business school, got my MBA in entrepreneurship and consulting, and never looked back. And then just over the last 30 years of doing that work, realized so many of my clients are family businesses, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm really good with the family relationships. People trust me. I'm a great go-between one generation and the next, or one person and the next, one sibling and the next, because I've a product of, I guess, a couple of a mother who got widowed twice and divorced once, and
Wow.
did did divorce and remarriage counseling, and as a therapist for years. So I think I'm pretty naturally gifted at facilitating dialogue between family members. And
Complicated dialogue,
so,
I'm sure.
yeah, what's that?
Complicated dialogue, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers, and so I've done a lot of personal development work. I've studied with Jack Canfield, author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. I did Tony Robbins' work when he was first getting started with his Firewalk and Unleash the Power Within, and those are just big stuff. But I've been in and out of seminars and workshops and therapy, and I've always was sort of a natural born business therapist. So the book is now like a calling card for me. It's a very expensive business card, as you might say.
It only costs you a year of your life, right?
Mm. And tens of thousands of dollars in production and editing and all that other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I've toyed with the idea, and I usually get scared before I actually go through with it because I have an English degree, so like writing comes naturally to me, but I know what a lift it can be. But I hear so many great stories about people who get books out and what a great game changer it was for them. So,
Well, people oftentimes would say to me, even if it was just the emails that I wrote, that you write so well. And it's
mm,
because I'm pretty deliberate in my thinking and my writing and my communication. And um, I'm very transparent. And it's not like I'm a great storyteller, because I'm not,
hmm,
but I have a lot of information, a lot of knowledge that I've collected over 30 years. So there's a lot to share.
Yeah, and I'm sure, it's one thing to try and facilitate conversations between, millennials and boomers, but it's another thing when there's a dynamic of the family sort of in the middle of that conversation that I think really requires a special touch and a deep understanding of those kind of dynamics to actually move something forward.
And really what it is, Emily, I think is it's a so-called division of church and state. You have to separate the business from the family.
Yeah.
You have to separate the ownership from the family and from the business. They're all commingled and they don't see the distinctions. So if we can just treat the business as a business, and if we can agree what our goals are, and that's a big if, right? A 60-year-old and 30-year-old might have very different
Right.
goals, right? One's willing to bet the farm, the other's wanting to just live off the food that comes from the farm, and so he's not going to take big gambles. But so if we can align the vision around something that everyone can agree on, then we can follow a set of rules, or a playbook, and then we can deal with family issues as a family.
Mm-hmm.
They set up family councils for that, have a family constitution, which is only after you are getting into third generation, fourth generation, where you're now got sort of family members that are distant, like relatives, in-laws, cousins. So you need some kind of a constitution for that. And then an ownership board, which is like a board of advisors, board of directors, it ultimately evolves into. And they all have very different missions. So getting everyone on the same page of the business is what I'm really good at. And like, folks, this is what we're focusing on doing, and this is how we're going to do it. So
Yeah, I'm thinking I should introduce you to someone that might handle the other part of what you're talking about, just sort of that family conversations piece. So I'll make a note to do that after we talk. You mentioned Playbook. What's a playbook, and why do you think that growing businesses can really benefit from having one?
So I first, my first introduction or idea that there's a playbook in business starts with arguably one of the most well-read books on small business, and that is by Michael Gerber, and it was The E-Myth.
Mm-hmm.
And the E-Myth, basically, the E, for listeners who are not familiar, stands for entrepreneur, and the myth is that most entrepreneurs or small business people are entrepreneurs by default, not by design. And they had what he called an entrepreneurial seizure. They woke up one day and said, like, wait, why am I being a plumber for ABC Plumbing Company when I could just start my own plumbing company? But what they don't realize is that the business of plumbing and being a plumber are two wildly different things. And so, what he put out was a playbook for how to manage a small business and how to break the business down into its component parts: sales and marketing, finance and record keeping, and the doing of the business, which is the making, the producing of the product. So, there have been other playbooks, operating systems. The, those of you listening to this might be familiar with EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. Started with a book by Gino Wickman called Traction,
Mm-hmm.
and it was about getting traction, or what the others might call execution, done in your business. And so it has a playbook. It's a set of tools that you'd follow for putting better execution practices and getting more traction in your business. A more sophisticated tool or a playbook would be the Gazelle's Scaling Up, otherwise known as Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, Scaling Up 2.0. For a larger middle market company, a suite of tools that deals with people, strategy, execution, and cash. And so where EOS is really strong and does a really good job by simplifying, the area of execution, and they do a decent job also, I think, a pretty good job with people. I think where it's really weak is on strategy and on cash tools. And so there are a series of some very robust tools in the scaling up. And in my book, I wanted something that spoke more to the family. And so I put together my 7 Ps framework, which is very similar to the two others I just spoke about, but it goes into purpose. It talks about planning. It covers a topic that neither of them talk about, which is your products or your services, and which is basically your marketing. Those both systems are very light on that. It talks about people, priorities, processes, and performance.
Cool.
And so, you put these together and you start in any order. And, most people we recommend start with, what are your core values? What's your core purpose?
Definitely.
So, and freedom, right? Like freedom is where, it's probably, I don't know if you can tell if it's where you began, but for me, purpose is your calling. It's your mission. It's like, why do you exist?
Yeah.
And my calling has, I think, for many, many decades been about helping others and guiding others to find their freedom because I was blessed with that freedom. And out of, what is the phrase? Noblesse oblige, an obligation of the nobility or something to share that and, and help others get there as well.
Yeah, we share that in common. Our core purpose is create freedom for people to do what they love and make a big impact. So we're on the same line there with freedom
Yeah,
and
totally.
mission.
So, and I think it's what most entrepreneurs want. And most coaches would say, well, that's what we do too, is we help them guide them towards their freedom.
Yeah.
So,
Um, we run on EOS and it's been transformational. We've been running on that program with an implementer for about 2 years now. And then through my work with EO Entrepreneurs Organization, we do scaling up because obviously Vern is a founder of EO. So as part of the curriculum for the accelerator, we go through scaling up each quarter. Um, and they're both great, and they're both I do what you do, which is I've cherry picked a lot from both, but from a day to day, we're fully running on EOS, and it's beautiful. The simplicity of it is so beautiful.
yeah, I think I sometimes make the analogy between Apple and Microsoft or
Yeah.
Apple and Google because EOS is like Apple.
Mm-hmm.
It's a closed system. They don't want you to open the architecture. They want you to follow it
Yep.
in lockstep from point A to point, Z, A to Z. And scaling up is an open architecture. It's like add, subtract, do it in any order you see fit, and it's hackable, if you will. They generously give out much of their IP. They
Mm-hmm.
don't try and police or control it, and um, yeah. So it's an argument as to who will win the race, but ultimately the race is about empowering small and medium-sized business owners to create jobs,
Mm-hmm.
to fuel that entrepreneurial spirit, and so that innovation is a constant, and entrepreneurs change lives and families.
And being able to unify a team behind a core purpose and core values and what it is you're selling creates the exponential growth that I think entrepreneurs are motivated by growth and by freedom. I feel like I'm motivated by both, and I've managed to temper each with each other, but I think there's two ways to think about what it is you're trying to do as the entrepreneur.
Yeah, I oftentimes go back to a single client that I've been working with for 6 years because the moment that we came upon the purpose, and it was literally like peeling an onion away and getting really down to the core, and it took us a few months, but once we got to it and nailed it, it like everything started to create lift.
Mm.
And now uh, I think everything that I see that happens in that business is about that purpose, and their purpose is raising the bar. And it's everything in their industry, in their community, in their with their employees, with their customers. And so, yeah, last night I was just reviewing their monthly employee internal newsletter, and it's just like everything just keeps getting better. The story keeps getting better. It's like it becomes a destination
Yeah.
employer, and people want to work for like the best, companies.
They want to work
So
with people that have a vision that they can get excited about too. It's
Yep.
Anyway.
Yeah, your purpose is right if people are getting out of bed and are excited to do what you're doing.
Totally.
So, yep.
So anything else you're working on that you want to share? I mean, not like launching a book is an easy lift.
Yeah, well, I doubled down, I guess, and I added a podcast to it as well by the same title. And what I'm working on is trying to collaborate with other family business advisors, be they coaches, consultants, succession planners, folks who are into multi-generational governance and councils. Um, I'm actually doing an interview later today, a podcast interview with someone from the Family Business Consulting Group. Many of these guys are PhDs and have written many books on the subject of family business. So I'm very excited about creating this podcast community, which I think will have some valuable stuff for family businesses. So yeah, doubling down on that and just trying to keep my enthusiasm through what is a very difficult time in our very dark period for the world.
Absolutely. So, congrats on the podcast. Where do people go to find your podcast? Just on your website?
So they can go to disruptivesuccessor.com and they'll find a link to the podcast, which takes them to Disruptive Successor Show. And if they think they would be a good guest, they could schedule themselves for a recording and we'll have a conversation if I'm not familiar with them and talk about their story. So,
excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's great work that you're doing. Thank you for sharing your brilliance around how you've been able to help people solve these issues in their own businesses, and for sharing your thoughts today. And congrats again on the new book.
Thank you very much. And if you drive through the North Philly station and you see a JHC logo on a water tower, take a photo and shoot it over to me.
That's North Philly?
North Philly.
North Philly. I don't make my way up to North Philly all that much, but
not too attractive neighborhood. It's a manufacturing facility where it once was a large Ford motor plant, then it was a Sears plant, and then my family took over the business.
So
and
cool.
then Yep. So
yeah, we have a client in Philly who is a specialty menswear tailor, and they do custom clothing. So he has a very boutique kind of business, but it's interesting. He's doing similar work to what you were doing.
yeah, well, I had a hand painted wearable art clothing business.
Wow.
And so we were creating unbelievable designs on silks, leather, leggings, cotton t-shirts, and selling them for exorbitant prices in the middle 80s. And yeah, that was a business I thought was going to go places, but unfortunately, choose your partner wisely. And I think that's why so many businesses are family owned and controlled, is because you may not always trust your sibling, but you'll oftentimes know what they're capable of or what they will do. And ultimately, blood is thicker than water, so it stays together better.
Yeah, I have my sister is our controller, so we work together in that way, and it's fine. I guess because I'm the oldest and she's the youngest, so I'm naturally bossy anyway to her, so it works at work too. But we shut it off when we're done work. We're family time, and when we're at work, we're work time.
Well, great. Well, when your child is grown and ready to take over the business, I know it'll be a long time from now. We'll get him a copy of my book, and if I'm not too old, provide some coaching to them.
Sounds like a dream.
Yeah, right.
Cool. Well, thanks
All right,
again
Emily.
for being here and for sharing your info with us.
Thank you very much.